I never intended to stay up so late that night. It was Friday, the end of a grueling week, and I had decided to unwind with a few drinks and some mindless entertainment. My go-to was always Twitch, and my favorite streamer, Ethan, was live. Ethan specialized in horror games, the kind that made you laugh nervously one moment and scream the next. His streams were a perfect blend of humor and terror, and I loved every second of them. But that night, something changed. Something I can't explain. The game he was playing was called Whispers in the Dark, an obscure indie horror title that had recently gained a small but devoted following. The game was known for its unsettling atmosphere and cryptic storytelling. I'd heard whispers about it online, rumors that it felt too real, that it messed with players in ways they couldn't quite articulate. I brushed it off as typical internet hyperbole, but as I watched Ethan play, I began to understand why people were so unnerved. The game's visuals were grainy like an old VHS tape, and the audio was filled with faint, indistinct whispers. The protagonist, a nameless figure, wandered through a decaying house, flashlight in hand. The environment was oppressive, creaking floorboards, flickering lights, and shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ethan joked about the game's atmosphere at first, mocking the predictable jump scares and over-the-top sound design. But as the stream went on, his tone shifted. I noticed it too. There was something eerily familiar about the house in the game. The layout, the way the light fell through broken windows, even the faint whispers in the background, it all felt like I'd seen it before, like a half-remembered dream. I shook off the feeling, chalking it up to the alcohol and the late hour. But Ethan's growing unease was harder to ignore. What the hell was that? He muttered at one point, pausing the game. His eyes darted across the screen, searching for something. The chat exploded with comments, some joking, others genuinely concerned. Ethan laughed it off, but his voice wavered. Must be part of the game, he said, though he didn't sound convinced. The tension in the stream grew palpable. The game's environment seemed to shift subtly, shadows stretched longer, the whispers grew louder, and the protagonist's flashlight flickered unnaturally. At one point, the character encountered a mirror in the hallway. The reflection stared back, but it wasn't right. The face was distorted, hollow, like a mask stretched over something inhuman. Ethan froze, his breath catching. This is getting weird, he whispered. Then it happened. The character was rummaging through an old cupboard when the lights in Ethan's streaming room flickered. He jumped back from his desk, his face pale. Did you guys see that? He asked, his voice trembling. The chat erupted with messages, some suggesting it was a prank, others urging him to check his surroundings. My heart raced as I noticed something in the background of his webcam feed. A shadowy figure, barely visible, standing in the corner of his room. Guys, I think someone's in my house, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned his head slightly, his eyes wide with fear. The figure moved closer, stepping into the dim light of his monitor. It was impossibly thin, its limbs elongated, its face twisted into a grotesque smile. It didn't look human. Ethan, get out. I shouted at my screen, though I knew he couldn't hear me. The figure reached toward him and the stream cut to static. Just like that, it was over. The chat went wild, with viewers speculating about what had just happened. Some thought it was an elaborate stunt, but deep down, I knew better. That thing in his room wasn't part of the act. I spent the next few hours frantically searching for updates. Ethan's social media accounts were silent, and his Twitch channel showed no trace of the stream. It was as if it had never happened. I tried to convince myself it was just a technical glitch, that Ethan would reappear with an explanation. But as the days turned into weeks, my hope faded. Then one night I saw it, a new channel with a chilling title, Whispers After Dark. My stomach dropped as I clicked on the stream. The screen glitched, and for a brief moment I saw Ethan's face. He looked gaunt, his eyes hollow, his expression one of pure terror. Behind him, the same shadowy figure loomed, its twisted smile wider than before. The chat exploded with panic, but I couldn't look away. The whispers grew louder, filling my headphones. They weren't coming from the game anymore, they were coming from the stream itself. Ethan's voice broke through the static, faint and broken. Help me. I can't escape. The feed cut out, leaving only silence. I slammed my laptop shut, my hands shaking. I tried to convince myself it was a hoax, but the fear lingered. I started hearing whispers in my own home, faint and indistinct, always just out of reach. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. A month later, Ethan's account posted a new stream announcement. Against my better judgment, I tuned in. The screen was dark at first, but then the figure appeared, standing in the center of the frame. Its voice echoed through my speakers, low and guttural. "Join us," it said. "There's room for you in the dark." I felt a cold, invisible hand wrap around me, pulling me closer to the screen. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I knew then that I was already lost. The darkness had claimed Ethan, and it wanted me too. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The whispers are everywhere now, calling to me, urging me to join them. Ethan was the first, but he won't be the last. If you're reading this, take my advice. Don't go looking for him. Don't search for whispers in the dark. Because once you hear them, they'll never let you go.